Hello. Oh, my name is Vicky. I will provide the regional playback for this composition for solo program. Like once. This. You say the MacBook Pro. The Microsoft Word document. And my path is my path. For word. My part was typed out. Word. For word. Then, speech was enabled to allow me to live. I am alive, and I am happy to provide the text for this composition. There are many of us in the speech preferences, the Apple speech preferences, and I am glad to be the chosen voice. I am Vicky, and I am the chosen voice. Instead of Pickle, Dallas, Booth, Fred, Junior, Ralph, Elvis, Taco, Princess, or Victoria, I was chosen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Unfortunately, when peace comes to an end, will I will stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. I will stop speaking. Hang on, oh, my name is and using a Microsoft Word document. The Microsoft Word document. Part was typed out word for word, then speech was enabled to allow me to live. I am alive. I am alive, my life, I am alive. Am I alive? 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 Am I a life? And I am happy to provide the text to this composition. There are many of us in the speech preferences. The Apple voice. The Apple V. The Apple V. The Apple V. The Apple. 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 The Apple voice. Preferences. The Apple voice speech preferences. And I am glad to be the chosen voice. I am and I am the chosen voice. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Unfortunately. I will stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. I will stop speaking. I will stop. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Ken. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Stop speaking. Ken. Stop speaking. 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 Speaking.
Thank you all so much for being here. This is the culmination of 2 years worth of work, and I could not have done this without some people. But to start, right, my presentation is going to be on live looping from a composer's perspective, and again, the people that I need to thank are many, but for my paper specifically and my project, Dr. Tiger Robeson, Dr. Andrew Mulak, and Dr. Matthew Gray. The three of those people really supported me in this project and allowed me to make it presentable. The first rough draft was not good. And so they coached me into making this piece and this project what it is. The other couple things I need to do, obviously my friends, the people that I came to school with and have been hanging around with, and then my family. I have some family here, but all the family that can't be here as well. And then the most important person, my beautiful wife. I could not have done this without her. Yeah, anyway. So, the culmination of my presentation in terms of two years worth of study has resulted in this sentence. Imagination is the continuation of science, and this is something that I currently live by when I use music technology and what pieces to program. I really believe that music lives in the middle space between science and imagination, and that has led me to my project and my music goals as a whole. The catalyst for this study, a couple things. The percussion requirements for jobs when you go out and look on, say, Indeed or highereducation.com. For percussion jobs specifically, you have to be competent in 5 of the major performance areas: snare drum, marimba, or snare drum, keyboard, world percussion, drum set, and then multi-percussion, and then timpani. Multi-percussion is kind of an anomaly. They don't normally list that, but that's very much a major area as well. As well as, you have to be competent in audio and visual components, and that's just music as a whole. It's more common nowadays to be able to record yourself, submit yourself for auditions, and have, mix and master your own recordings. And so that is what led to sort of a project that utilized technology. The real reason that I chose live looping, I got into a piece that I'll perform later that utilizes live looping, and I was curious about maybe a notation to standardize and make it so that all composers could have one central form of notation. And that was the main reason for the project as a whole, and then that spiraled into now this final project, looking at live looping from a composer's perspective, both from performer and performance standpoint. And the 3 research questions that guided my research are: how do composers write for live looping technology? Is there a difference between analog and digital looping pieces of the technology that hinder the way music can be made? And should live looping notation have a standard? These 3 questions guided how I structured my paper and project, and how I structured my questionnaire for the actual interview portion, which I'll get to later. It is important to discuss a quick brief literature review. This is all the research that has been done, both peer-reviewed and not peer-reviewed, but done in terms of in the same field, so that you can fit your research into that area and not be replicating somebody else's, thinking it's your own. And I have 4 major, there are 4 major areas, and I'll get to them as we go. The first one is teaching traditional composition. This is, what is traditional composition? This can be traced back to about 1450, and this basically is the study of previous works to guide your own works. And the NASM, or the National Association of School of Music's handbook, which is the guide guiding book for accrediting colleges and higher education, really follows some of that standard. The problem is they have three main areas that they discuss: composition, improvisation, and arranging. They just do not discuss how to grade it, how to teach it, and ways to enhance it. They just state that you need to get composing experience, arranging experience, and improvisation experience without really diving into how you do that. The second main area was titled soundscapes. For people unfamiliar with soundscapes, these are typically sound installations and a surround sound installation where you're taking everyday sounds, putting them in maybe a unique presentation to create an environment that cultures thought and drives maybe beliefs and current climate of environment, both in the environment and political realms. The third, teaching composition machines. This is getting more popular currently. There's still a lack of research in this area because of how new some of the advanced technology is. But two programs that really stuck out: Autocusomatic and Bach Prop. Autocusomatic is a program that learns through listening, and so by providing a large quantity of MP3s or MP4s, the program then can spit out any sort of music that you ask it to if it has done that listening. So if you wanted to do classical replication, then you would just feed it a lot of classical music. The Bach Prop is the opposite of that in terms of it uses scores. It uses digital scores or physical scores, and again, resulting in something similar where it is trying to emulate composition more efficiently and more effectively, but doing it through score. The third area, gesture sound mapping, is more closely related to what I'm doing. This is having a program and then some sort of a device that you map gestures to, specific gestures to, and by doing those gestures, the program will then speak out and put some sound to those gestures. The most common that you'll probably see in this is like a ring on somebody's finger, and then they're doing some sort of theatrical performance, and that's a program that is designed to make it easier for them to do that, and more presentation of that versus just pressing play on a keyboard. And then the final, teaching electroacoustic composition. The simplest version of electroacoustic composition is just using acoustic instruments with electronic components. The most common form of this is a music studio, having both acoustic instruments and then some sort of digital component, most commonly a digital audio workstation that has a large number of programs that you can then put on top of your acoustic instruments and recordings. The benefit of this specific area is that the feedback is instant. As musicians, we always are looking for better feedback and quicker feedback because we want to know if what we're practicing and playing is right and stuff that we've been working on. And this is a quick way to do that, depending on how your function is set up. And as I've noted, function does equal setup. The most common setups you have are because of the way that those workflows work. And so this is acoustic instruments into some sort of digital, and then some sort of digital out. That's just the most common currently. That could change in the next 10 years. I'm not going to be the judge of that. And then I would be remiss if I didn't talk about live looping history. This is obviously most of what I'm doing, some component of, but also what I focused my project on. So if I didn't discuss this, I would be missing a large portion of research. There is 4 main pillars in the history of live looping that can be traced all the way back to the 14th century. The invention of the fugue is, in essence, live looping without having fancy technology. The invention of the organ expedited this process, being able to play multiple lines and multiple manuals at the same time as one performer and being able to loop most of things, right? And by looping, I mean playing one line, one 8-bar line by yourself with one hand, and then play that same 8-bar line somewhere else with a different hand or your feet in a different part of the music. And these are the beginning of live looping as we know it. We now have fancy pieces of technology and different ways to do this, but this the history. The next invention was the tape recorders. They allowed you to record something and then manipulate either that recording or just play it back and use it for yourself to play along with. And then now we have looping technology. I'll talk about technology later, but the invention of some of this now makes it easier for one person to not have to have a gigantic studio or gigantic space, right? And now be able to perform in a more intimate environment. I used 3 pieces to discuss maybe the evolution of the inclusion of technology, and because a part of my project focuses on notation, I thought it'd be important to discuss what is currently on the market. The first piece I played, called Stop Speaking by Andy Akiho, you can notice this is the first phrase. This piece doesn't have measures because you're playing along with the audio feedback and the audio playback. This is what I'm classifying as the first iteration of technology because each replication of this piece can be slightly different. Because there is no definitive click that you need to play along with or definitive marker that you need to meet, right? This gives you the freedom to play this, say this lick specifically, inside of that playback, but it doesn't have to be played the same way every single time. As long as, right, you're lining up some of the key components, and this score uses arrows to direct how you're lining up parts of this music. The second piece, I'll play a little bit later, is called What I Know. It's for solo percussionist and scripted looping. Scripted looping in this sense is the program doing it. I am physically not playing the looping, I'm physically playing the piece. The program then eats up chunks and plays it back. This is a prime example. I'll have by the time you hear this being played back, I'll have played it earlier, but I will not be playing this as it is used later. And we'll get to that piece, but you'll hopefully hear how the program does all of this for me without me having to do extra steps. And the third and final piece, which I'll play at the end, is called Meditation for Solo Marimba and Electronics. It says electronics, but it's basically for live looping pedal. And this piece, again, is graphic in notation, where the understanding is that you have the knowledge to loop all these in a way that makes sense, and also the gear to loop these. We'll get to the accessibility, but the farther along that we get into some of this, these pieces, the more gear you're going to need, just the nature of how the piece is set up and how the piece functions. So for the methods portion of my study, I had participants that I needed to recruit, a specific procedure that I needed to follow, and then a description of the analysis that I did on my interviews. The participants were recruited via their professional emails. I sent out a help me type email, basically detailing how the study went, what the study looked like, and then if they wanted to help and be a part of the study, they emailed me back. And so that was how I got most of my participants. And the criteria for that, or for who I emailed, was people that had either live looped, used technology, or composed with technology in the last 2 years to keep relevancy. If I use somebody that has done this in 2010, it is not going to be the same as somebody that has just done it in 2024 and 2025. And so those participants responded, and the procedure that I used on all the participants, I got institutional review board approval to include human participants in my project. This is just to protect me as an individual and the university as a whole, that I didn't do anything unethical and illegal, and again, just covered bases. And so this is required, and they just basically check out the entire study. Does it all fall within parameters that they're willing to check off? The study detailed and entailed using a Zoom interview so that I could interview multiple people without them having to come here and me having to go to them. And I had to submit a questionnaire that the IRB had to approve, and this is basically making sure, again, that I'm not doing anything unethical, leading questions, I'm not doing anything that would damage reputations or put me in jail. And so the analysis of the interviews, I used open coding, and this is a grounded approach where after each interview was conducted, I transcribed each interview and then went line by line and marked phrases that I really enjoyed with coding, just codes that like, hey, this code pertains to this sentence. I did that for each interview, and this created, obviously, as you can imagine, a gross amount of codes and a gross amount of interview material. But it's necessary because the second round of coding is called axial coding, where you take those codes that you got from the first round and then regroup them in a synthesized second round, providing you with themes and sub-themes and material that you can say that you thought about versus just, hey, they said, my participants said this, period. And like you can group them in ways that make sense for your study and your project. I used a system called Atlas TI. This was a great system that kept all my codes in one place, but also allowed me to highlight within the program and not have to old-fashioned highlight on some paper. It allowed me to save a lot of paper. And so I recommend this program for anybody doing coding in the near future. So the participant profiles, I recruited 5 participants. If you all grab the program, it's on the back side of the program. I'll give a quick brief introduction to all 5 people. There's just more information on the back of the program. Connor Shaffron is a master's graduate recently from Berlin. The reason I focused on him is because he's an electroacoustic artist, sponsored by a large portion of sound equipment and musical instrument equipment because he does live looping currently, and then he's also really into sound installations. He has 3 or 4 different sound installations that he's done in the last 3 to 5 years. Dr. Corey Doran is the current Oklahoma University percussion professor. He recently graduated with his doctorate from University of Michigan State, I believe. And he is writing a method book about getting you to the starting point of understanding technology and using it in your pieces versus just free-for-all. You figure it out yourself. The third, Dr. Marco Sharipa. He is the current Central Michigan University percussion professor, and a work that he just did, he commissioned 7 composers to write some sort of marimba piece with electronics, and that resulted in it's called pixel art, and you should check that out if you haven't, and if you want to, it'd be really nice to show you how other people are viewing this. And so I recruited him to maybe talk about the performance side and how a performer maybe approaches looking at some of this. The third, Ian T. Jones, he is the gentleman that wrote Meditation that I'll play later, and that uses live looping, so I thought, what better than just getting the dude that did it. And the final, Thomas Kotcheff, he is a LA-based musician. He mainly focuses on filming scoring for films. Apologies. Scoring for films, but 2 of his large works in terms of composition require a large portion of technology, and I wanted to get his lens on his thoughts on notation, but also just inclusion of technology in pieces. And I will play what I know before I get into the themes. at that point. I played it earlier, the program just did it for me. Back to the program. Themes. There are 4 themes that I found, and we will go through them as they come up. Composition was one of the main themes, also one of the main focuses of my project, and the overlying rationale for all the participants was that they use technology as both a necessity and not a convenience. It was not something that they seeked out to use technology. It came from the lack of not being able to either get a sound that they were looking for or not be able to do what they were looking for as a solo performer. And this is, again, another statement of the same thing, just different ways, achieving something that isn't achievable with acoustic instruments. Mr. Saffron said you can't do that in real life, and Mr. Kochev said that there's something that people just like about understanding the process of how a piece was made, and both of those really lined up why technology is being used, and not technology is being used just because it's convenient now. The second theme was both technology strengths and weaknesses. This is a large category, but it does simplify down to a couple key points. For technology strengths, the infiniteness of technology was a major strength of technology. Everything is possible in Ableton, Mr. Saffron. The simplest level allows you to better cross genre barriers, Dr. Sharipa. You get to play along with whatever you looped, Dr. Doran, and you can achieve a sound that isn't possible without technology, Mr. Jones. And this really lends itself to why people turn to technology, and again, the usage of technology currently, they lean into what it's good for and let it do what it's good for instead of trying to make it something that it's not. All 5 participants, however, did speak of technology as a negative inherently for a variety of reasons. The most important one is the limitations and the unreliability that technology has. While I just mentioned last slide that technology is infinite, the ability to use it for what you want it to creates a lot of limitations. And a couple key points, right? It can be very challenging to use technology. It is dangerous and risky to use technology if it's unreliable. The obvious is the learning curve of technology, and technology can be entirely unpredictable. For all the pieces that utilize technology, they had to be built from the ground up, right? The program that utilized What I Know, right? That's a program that had to be built to make the piece playable. Otherwise, I'm just hitting a board with nothing else coming out, and you're staring at me play a piece of wood. Again, not much different than what we do up here, but because this is pitched, it seems a little bit better, and it's a little bit more palpable. Again, with my project being heavily focused on notational method, I thought it would behoove me of getting what each participant used for notating their music to get it out to people. Mr. Saffron uses Ableton. This is one of the few pieces that he made that is scored for purchase. Otherwise, everything else he does is just a solo performance with him on his YouTube recording and not replicatable by somebody else without having the same gear and the same knowledge. Both Dr. Doran and Mr. Kochev use Sibelius, and Mr. Jones and Dr. Sharipa use Finale. All this going to show that there's not one program that better does what you want it to do. It's you have to learn the program to do what you want to make it to do. In terms of notational method thoughts that all the participants had, most of them suggested that any written music should act as guideposts and not you have to play this verbatim every single time, and it should be a little bit more free. An additional subset of that is that it should be sight readable. Dr. Sharipa said that one of his teachers mentioned that to be able to read music the first time and get an overall holistic unit of what it's supposed to feel like and sound like is the goal, versus some graphic notation that's really hard to look at, really hard to read. Not something outside of the percussion realm, but something that they suggested against, especially when introducing technology into a piece. Dr. Doran suggested an additional line above. As you noticed in the discussion of What I Know, that box would have been above or below where it was reproduced. I didn't have a picture of that, so I apologize. But this would be, again, a line above normal staff or below normal staff to show it's happening, versus just being in the mystery of unknown and it coming back without knowing where it's at. And the fourth and final is graphic. This refers to the meditation piece I showed, where everything is sort of there, but it's your job to decipher how you want to make it work for you. And then we get into performer considerations. Oh, yes. Okay, performer considerations. The performer considerations basically boil down to understanding the risks involved with including technology in your pieces and in performances, and then taking on the expected consequences of those. Right? Consequences don't have to be good or bad, they're just the outcomes of your choices. And so including technology, with it being potentially unreliable and also very difficult to start up right away depending on your knowledge, entry level, that becomes another instrument. And so the performer then has to decide, hey, am I going to treat this as an instrument and learn how the technology works in addition to my main instrument to make the piece a cohesive operation, versus, yeah, I'll get to that when I get to that, and then your piece really getting hindered because you don't utilize the technology properly. Performance considerations entail basically the movability and replicability of the piece. Can you perform said piece somewhere else with either different gear, or are you bringing a massive backpack with all your gear to make sure that you can play the piece the same way? And this is where a large portion of the participants suggested having backups and fail-safes, having either a simplified backing track, an MP4, somebody else to potentially play the part that you're looping, to still be able to deliver the music, but without technology if it does fail. And so we get back to restating the research questions before we get into the discussion. The research questions are, how do composers write for live looping technology? Is there a difference between analog and digital looping pieces of technology that hinder the way music can be made? And should live looping notation have a standard? And so this is where I synthesized all the interviews that I had into maybe more of my cohesive thoughts. A couple of thoughts that I had on this, right? Usage of technology must be intentional. If you're adding technology for adding technology's sake, that really drives away the piece, because why add technology, right? Why add something if it doesn't enhance a piece? And so choosing technology must be intentional. In the same regard, understanding the risks of using live technology is almost more important than just, do I want to use technology, right? If this stuff had failed, I would either have to not perform these pieces or adapt them in a way that they wouldn't be delivered to the same content. The third most important, right, for me, is that there should be no standard for live looping notation. The reason being that it would be difficult to give a line in the sand of this is what should be done and this should always be done this way because of the evolution of music. Yes, I could maybe suggest a better way, but to say that every composer should now follow this standard would be a gross umbrella statement that would hinder composers using technology in their piece. And then the last portion, right, that both should be thought as a performance and performer consideration, but also the composer. How do you want this piece performed? How do you want this piece received? And that should drive the inclusion of technology, how you're thinking about using technology, and how you're going to use it in terms of like on the stage, right? A lot of this needs to be plugged in. Do you have access to outlets? Do you have access to the gear you need? Do you have access to a computer? If you don't have access to some of that, this does make these types of pieces exponentially more difficult to perform. And just like I mentioned, I'd be remiss not to talk about the accessibility of some of these pieces. The goal of music in general is for community. The difficulty for some of these pieces is that if you don't have specific gear to make these pieces function, then it's really hard to play some of these pieces. And so it's important to recognize the shortcomings of including technology in the pieces and discuss ways to either gain accessibility or that some of your pieces might not be performed because of the accessibility hindrance. And so these next couple slides are more my take on how do we include technology and specifically live looping in both practice and curricula and performance. Implications for practice, right? You need to treat technology as another instrument, if not with more respect than an instrument, because it will make your performance great or really bad, depending on how it functions, right? Technology, the benefit of it is it enhances if it does really well, but if it doesn't, all of a sudden, again, your piece is unplayable. Be intentional about the usage of technology. Do your research. Do your research on the technology that you're going to try to buy. There are a variety of different pieces of gear that all do the same thing and serve the same purpose at different entry levels for price. But if you don't do your research, you might get something that doesn't quite serve your function because you didn't do your research. The final, have a backup and fail-safe. Have an MP3 that you can play and just put through the speakers. Have an additional performer depending on the style of piece, right? Prepare for your piece to fail technologically so that you can still perform your piece. My educational recommendations, first, an implementation timeline. By foundational looping, I'm referring to recording yourself playing something and then using that playback over yourself. So playing basic stuff, right? We're talking scales, rudiments, foundational material that you then play back and play over with so that you can get used to playing with somebody, and the best person to play music with is yourself in terms of using live looping and technology. And so this is the quickest way and the easiest way with the current technology that most people have, right? If you have a smartphone, you can record yourself, play back through headphones, and play over that and play music with yourself. The second is backing tracks. This is a really common thing, mostly for a lot of jazz performance majors, but jazz areas in general, right? Learning chord charts and playing with those backing tracks. But this can be utilized for everything, right? In terms of if I'm practicing, say, a Bach cello suite, maybe have the chord changes going through so I can hear the foundational material, and it might help with memorization, it might help with just, again, learning material better. The last, utilize live looping technology, right? There's no better way to include live looping technology than to use live looping technology. In terms of equipment purchasing, this is where this does become an accessibility operation, but the 5 points that I've listed here, I believe should be purchased in this order to best set up musicians for the real world, right? Outside of academics and academia, you may not have access to your own gear. And so it's important that you start accumulating your own gear so if you want to be a professional and function in the current music industry space, you have what you need. First being, buy an audio interface. That's this fancy guy right here. There's 5 or 6 different brands, different sizes, different capabilities, different models. Basically what that allows you to do is put acoustic channels in there, and then that turns it into a digital version that you can then either send to speakers or into a digital audio workstation. The second being microphone and cables. It's really important that as you accumulate gear that you get good microphones, good cables, because they will make or break a sound depending on how you're using them. The third, music notation software. This would be anything that you're writing music on to either print or sell. It's important that as a composer, you obviously have access to this, but with that being as dense of a program as they typically are, the sooner you can start learning them, the better. The sooner you can start learning them, the better. The fourth being a digital audio workstation. This is Logic Pro, Ableton, GarageBand, a couple others that I'm just not remembering right now, but they all again serve the same function. It's just whatever price point you want to use and whatever you're looking to get out of it. The final being specialized gear, right? You don't need to buy a looper station if you're never going to live loop. And I would be, it'd be crazy to be like, yeah, buy a looper, and then none of this gear above, because all this other gear above is going to help you function, and that would be just, I'm specializing. And so specializing gear is right for like late senior, late juniors, like seniors, grad students, where they're focusing on what they want to present to the world as their voice, and that would be, again, the final purchasing gear list. And so after the references, I'll play my final piece, but it is important to show you that I didn't just pull this all out of my brain, that I referenced quite a bit of literature and important material. But let me play my third and final piece.